Welcome to our Career Talk Thursdays. My name is Emily and I'll be your host for today. So I'd like to begin this session with an acknowledgement of country. As we gather for this meeting physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let us take a moment to reflect the meaning of place, and by doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We acknowledge the elders, past, present, and all of the lands we work and live on, and their ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I'm joining the call here from Brisbane, which is the land of the Turrbal people. And to introduce myself, my name is Emily. I'm one of the webinar hosts for Grad Australia. So this is one of our Career Talk Thursday sessions hosted by Grad Australia. For those of you who are not yet familiar with Grad Australia, it is a graduate career site where you can explore and get to know graduate employers, get a backstage pass at what it's like to work in a role at their company, and you can also apply for organizations that are a really good fit for you. So if you guys are interested, you can visit gradaustralia.com.au and set up your account to get notified of open applications and other opportunities you can apply to. Okay, so this session today is titled Why Choose a Career in Sales? And we're actually joined by two very, very renowned senior people in sales. So they're going to help give us some guidance and valuable insights into this area. So today we have Ashni Bakshi, and she's an enterprise account executive from Adobe. And then we also have Collin Lawrence, and he is a sales director at IQPC Australia. So I just wanted to let the two of them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into some questions. And as well, like normal, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to leave them in the messages. This is definitely the opportunity for you guys to ask questions, and do so while you have access to, an enterprise account executive and a sales director. So definitely ask questions. Okay, so Collin, would you like to start with a little bit about yourself? Maybe what you did at uni, how you got to IQPC, brief history on your career background as well.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Before I begin, I'd love to take the opportunity to thank Grad Australia for giving me the opportunity to be part of this. It's a great topic. So as a way of introduction, my name is Collin Lawrence. I'm the sales director at IQPC Australia. Talking about my experience and where I started. University, my pick was business management. So that was where I graduated. And furthermore, I got into this specific sector, which is the events industry. And I've been here for roughly about 12 years. Worked with different companies before I moved into IQPC in Dubai, which was back in 2015. And then moved to Sydney, Australia, and haven't looked back since. And during the course of my journey, obviously, I did start right at the very, entry level, doing a lot of the mundane tasks around, appointment setting to getting, a lot of these calls and prospecting to, growing up the ranks and learning a lot more about sales, immersing myself into understanding the concepts of sales. And here I am today working with a great organization and most importantly, a great team. So I lead a team of 8 sales reps who are fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks, Collin. I guess that's my cue to go. So hi, everyone. I'm Ashni Bakshi. And yeah, also thank you so much to Grad Australia for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this. And I think having been a graduate myself in a sales program, I think I know what a lot of you might be thinking. So I currently work for Adobe as an enterprise account executive. And the accounts or the industry that I cover is the higher education sector. So pretty much all the universities all across Australia. And prior to this, I was at IBM, and that's where I started. Well, I was there for about 6 years, and that's where I started my graduate program. So at uni, I did a Bachelor's of Business majoring in marketing. And so I did that at UTS. And then maybe what a lot of you are doing, this is what I did. I applied to a whole range of graduate programs, and I came across the IBM one. and tech wasn't quite wasn't the first thing at the top of my mind when I was thinking of applying. But I thought, it's a big company, let me give it a go. And similar, Adobe's also a big company. Let me give it a go. And yeah, here I am about 7 years later, having, similar to Colin as well, having done some of the, I guess, mundane tasks of cold calling, getting meetings, and all that stuff doesn't exactly go away, but it helps you sort of build the skills to then not take it as mundane. You kind of take it as, oh, okay, it's fine, you're just calling a mate. That's what it ends up becoming. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and yeah, pleased to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. So we have a bunch of questions that we prepared. So we're just going to jump into them. But yeah, feel free to leave any questions that you guys have in the chat, and then we'll also answer those. So let's start with the first question. So the first question we have is, what degrees are eligible to be in sales? So Ashni, do you want to start off with that one?
Yeah, sure thing. So at Adobe, we pretty much accept a lot of the degrees, but typically the people that apply for the sales roles have a commerce background, marketing, arts, psychology, even science, if you want to become a bit more technical. So yeah, I think it's quite broad.
Awesome. Thank you. Colin?
Yeah, I would second that as well. The way that we look at it, obviously, sales is a very lucrative career. You can come from different walks of life, having different degrees and different forms of education, and still land up in a sales role, which is quite, broad. While some might believe that you don't need a degree to be in sales, which is often not the case, you definitely will benefit from having an advanced degree. Particularly, what we see work really well is someone having that background of a degree in commerce, business management, economics, or that of PR, communications. They seem to be the sort of patterns that we see.
Okay, awesome. Another question we have was, what are the essential qualities for grads interested in exploring a career in sales? So, communication, anything like that, any qualities that you guys can think of? Colin, did you want to start with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the basics, right? And whether it's a grad or whether it's someone that has a lot of experience, one of the key things that I look for or we look for as an organization is the right attitude. Attitude speaks a lot for itself. Someone with a positive attitude will go move mountains, so to speak. And when you speak of sales, sales is not something that you are born with as a skill, as some tend to believe. It's a skill that is developed over time and as you gain experience. But attitude is something that you can't really teach. Sales techniques and skills can be taught. So that's the first and foremost thing. I'd say someone with a competitive spirit, is also someone that could be very successful, because you're always about numbers. You're thinking, how can you improve yourself? How can you be better all round? Someone with a good level of communication and confidence to articulate your value proposition or your message to the prospect is super important. Resilience. I love this part because as salespeople, whether it's at the entry level or someone that is doing an end-to-end sales role in the technology field or anything else, whether it's hardware, software, you tend to get a lot of no's. Every day is not the same. So it's how you build a level of resilience that would help you succeed in that role. And the last two that I would point out is the eagerness to learn. So if you're quite eager to learn, I'm pretty sure that there's so many concepts and things that you can really embed into your own sales strategies as you grow. And then of course, integrity. Integrity is super important because you got to be really true to yourself and honest about what you're doing, especially in sales, and also about the product and service that you're trying to sell, because people can see through it these days. It's not, back in the days you can churn and burn and move on from one customer to another, but that's not the way that we sell these days. So those are my qualities that when as a grad you're thinking about moving into sales, you probably will have to introspect.
Yeah, I think you've covered covered all of them, Colin, that I was going to talk about. But for me, I I do think a lot of it is captured out under what you said around attitude. So, you know, a lot of it comes like the resilience side of it, the drive, the motivation to be successful, as well as, you know, that competitive spirit that you were talking about. I think it all comes under that umbrella term. And what I guess, just to add to it, a lot of these things you can learn on the job. You can, I guess, enhance on the job, but you do need the basics or the foundation of it in you. So, you know, maybe you're a sporty person. So you may think you're not competitive, but you're a sporty person. So you are competitive. You do have that spirit, you know, because I used to think about a lot of this stuff like, oh, I'm not overly competitive, but I am because I play a lot of sport. So just think about it in a different light or a different lens, and you probably do have a lot of these foundational skills.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear. I think it's really interesting how you mentioned, Ashni, how you might not think you're a sporty person, but like if you're competitive, maybe that's like kind of like a hint that you have that side of you. Was there anything like when you guys were maybe going through university or in your early career, maybe even high school, was there any kind of traits or anything about yourself, like, for example, you were competitive in sports, that made you think, okay, I feel like a career in sales is for me? And maybe Ashni, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, sure. I feel like I touched on this part already, but yeah, I think for me it was the always I guess a bit of the resilience, like just personal experiences and always putting myself out of my comfort zone, made me reflect. And part of what I was doing as a grad was booking the meetings, was getting the appointments, and I always thought that yes, it may have seemed a bit mundane or a bit boring, so to speak, at the time, but I always thought that the way I kind of bounced back from it is what made me successful, or made me keep going. And I remember just thinking of like the little wins. I used to be like, yes, like I called 20 people and got one meeting. That's such a successful day. So just having things like that for yourself, or for me, helped me. And I think even when I was younger, if setbacks used to happen, personal or school or work or whatever life, I just used to be like, that's okay, I still did one thing, that helped me move towards my end goal. So I think being like results oriented and goal oriented also was another skill, that helped me think that, yeah, this sort of seems like a good career path for me.
I think it's quite a valid point you made earlier on in terms of the competitive spirit, and you see how people with a sporting background typically tend to showcase that as a key attribute or a skill when they do interview for sales roles. So they're considering sales roles. I'd say for me personally, that was one of the key things, as well as I played a lot of sports growing up. So the competitive spirit was always there, but in addition to that, I think the exposure to the whole aspect of social life, like as Ashley mentioned, look at it from different lenses. So if a person's quite social, an extrovert, not necessarily an extrovert or an introvert, but someone that can communicate well and has that level of confidence, that can be a good indication that you can transfer those skills over to a sales role. And then start working on it, and then you start to build and gain a lot more experience. So I think that for me was the clear indication that what I could I think I could do this job. I think I can get into sales. I never really thought or set out to be in sales, to be quite honest. When I was in uni and I was looking at graduating, it's actually a very interesting story where I had one of the couples who are friends of mine, who introduced me into this role and said, "You seem like a person that can talk. You've got a good circle of friends that can vouch for you. Why don't you give this a shot?" And of course, once I learned about it and I said, yes, let me do this, you also see a lot more of the earning potential. And so I think it was just me being driven at that point.
Awesome. That's super cool to hear. And I think as we talk about, what you just said, Colin, like getting into it and whatnot, I think that's a good segue into our next question, which is what to expect as like the first few weeks or months as a salesperson. So Ashni, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I think the first few weeks in any role, sales or another sort of profession or field, is going to be overwhelming because you're trying to get across new people, new process, new technology, or new area of expertise. For me, it was tech, but for a lot of you, it could be anything. So I think just accept that you're not going to know in the first few weeks and even months. Actually, even now, like, I'm happy to say that I don't know things, because it makes you curious, it makes you question things, and find out what you don't know. So I think that's quite normal. And then I guess moving on, depending on the type of sales role that you're in, after the first sort of month or two, you'll probably start talking. So if you're in a graduate program where there's sort of rotations, then that will be different based on whatever's designed for you in that program. But if you're in an entry level role, I think you will pretty much hit the ground running. So you will probably be given like a list or something where you will have to initially start off with just doing some research on contacts, seeing what drives them, what are some of them key motivations, and then once you get more comfortable understanding the actual buyer or the persona, you'll probably be asked to give them a call, and that's probably like nerve-wracking because you haven't done that before. But many times there'll be a script, you'll be working with someone senior to help you guide you through that conversation, with the real aim. And your aim, and this was my aim for the first 6 months, was just to get as many meetings as I can. And it was like, if you can get 5 meetings in a week, then that was like a KPI, that I was driven by. So, and then the fun stuff is that you actually do get to go to these meetings and you get to be a part of conferences and see how people do it, and then one day that will be you. So I think that's kind of what you expect in the first week through to 6 months.
Yeah, if I may have to speak on that, I'd say what to expect. I've always had this phrase: when someone comes in, expect the unexpected, and that goes to any role. The best way to look at it is break it down into 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. So 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months. It's the most crucial part of any person's career, whether it's in sales or if it is in another role, but more significantly in sales, because there's a lot more that you're trying to consume as you go through it. So the first 30 days is all about learning. Learn as much as you can, learn the processes, learn sort of your environment, right? And people around you. 30 to 60 days is typically when you have a lot more of the implementation of what you've learned, whether it's the processes and going through those calls and the meetings and appointments, etc. And then from the 60-day mark onwards, and this is something that you start to work on quite earlier on, is all about improvement. So you've implemented what you've learned, you improve, and you look back and you improve and progress. So I guess that's how I would summarize the first few months. And one key thing is, when grads come in, you're always thinking about how can I be the best salesperson, and on top of the leaderboard. And I'd say take it one day at a time. As long as you build a good foundation, you can then excel. So it's your learning curve for the first 3 months. Take as much time as you can to understand the different concepts, the processes, and the product in itself in terms of what you're selling, and then the rest will follow. Don't go after chasing numbers. Just meet your KPIs, and the rest is it eventuates.
Awesome. That was really cool. You both made really great points. Like, I think that 30, 60, 90-day thing, definitely something that can apply to a lot of different, industries as well. So really valuable, and yeah, really cool to think about, as a grad, you're in that, you're new, you're fresh, but then one day that's going to be you, in that senior person's position. That kind of leads me into another question, which is like in your first few months as well, I'm sure like a big thing that comes with sales is rejection. And that might be quite, unfamiliar for some people if they haven't, dealt with it as much in the past. So how can, grads go about navigating, the first couple months and, dealing with rejection, or even like the first year and just getting rejected, by leads and whatnot? Ashni, did you want to start with that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I touched on this before. So one way that I had was, rejection's going to happen, but then thinking about the time that I'm going to get that one meeting, which was the KPI. I was really motivated by that, and I just used to think of like the little wins. The other thing that I've actually realized a little bit later on, so when I was doing this as a grad, it didn't occur to me, but later on it did. And it was like, at the end of the day, these are just people. You're just talking to like, yes, they've got this C-suite title or this chancellor title or whatever it is, but they're just people. And you shouldn't take it personally if they're saying no to you, because they're not really saying no to you as Ashni or to you as whoever you are. They're actually just not interested in perhaps what you're offering at the moment. And typically the way I used to, so that was like a thing that a mindset that I had to get into. And a way I used to overcome that was, another way was that I just used to say, okay, cool, like, you may not be interested right now, but can I just grab your details? So, down the track, when you are interested, we can reach out to you with XYZ. So I think that also helped me, nurture them in the long run. And sometimes those people did come to fruition, so that they would reach out to you like a year later and say, oh, hey, like now we're looking at this. So sometimes it's not like anything you're actually, pretty much most of the time, it's not anything you're doing. It's just a circumstance thing for whoever's on the other side. So just keeping that in mind, and they're just a person. So it's okay, just like how you're a person, and you would have also so many times said no to people in your life. So when you think back to that, I think it really helps put it into perspective.
I think you touched upon the most important aspect, which is never take it personally. And I had this when I was, in those early days in my career, where I had a lot of I started to be consumed with self-doubt momentarily. I think a lot of people would go through the same as well. And as grads, if you're coming in, stepping into a new role, expect rejection in different forms, but it's never personal. It's about the product or the service. And perhaps there's many different factors contributing to someone saying no. And that necessarily doesn't mean that you've done a bad job. So rather than being consumed with self-doubt, try and take a different approach. Never to get angry and try and win an argument, for example. I think that's one of the worst things that you could do as a salesperson. Try and identify why it is a no, and rethink your own approach. One thing that we do within IQPC is we treat every no's with the same level of intent and approach as the yeses, because the no's are what is important for us, because statistics say, and also the analysis within our business, that 80% of the prospects we go out to reach out and demonstrate our capabilities, they say at least no about 5 times before they say yes. So every no is just another stepping stone to leading it to a yes down the track. So I'd say these are the key things that you want to be thinking about, but preempt the objections as well, and try and understand what could be a good way for me to have a rebuttal that would help them maybe change their mind, influence their purchase decision. So yeah, hope that sort of gives you guys some context.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I love that point, how you're saying like, they're saying no to like the product or the service. It's not you personally. Little fun fact about me, I used to do surveying. So, I had to approach about like 200 to 300 people a day. And it's just like, no, constantly. And then I had to think, and I was like, okay, because it was at a cinema, and I had to think, I was like, okay, if I was coming out of a movie, would I want to answer a questionnaire about the movie? Probably not. So it's very true. You have to separate it, otherwise it can, tarnish your perception of yourself, which is probably one of the worst things that can happen.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I thought it was really interesting how you mentioned, Colin, that, sometimes it can be like you can hear 5 no's before there's a yes. So I guess for people who haven't really gone into sales yet, is that quite common in sales? Like, as in, it's not always a yes straight away, as in you might get no's and then there's like a constant follow-up and whatnot. Is that something that's really common in sales?
100%. The worst thing you can do is, once you've had the initial discovery or you've proposed something to a prospect, is to expect that the prospect's going to say yes. Well, if they said yes on the second call, it's pretty easy to convince them and get the contract signed and sign them up, right? But what people don't prepare for is the no's. So I would say that no is always going to come from a prospect. It's about how can you influence that. And so identifying what the pain points are, the objectives are, and then rethinking your own approach. Have I done enough to build value for this particular prospect? So taking a step back to then thinking, well, how can I take 2 steps forward? Another key important part here is there's 3 things that you typically tend to have once you've demonstrated your value proposition to a prospect, right? So first is that they say yes, which means you can sign them up. The second is a no, but a lot of people fall into the maybe bracket, which is, I haven't made a decision yet. I still need more time. I haven't looked at this, which means that you can still try and work your way around educating those prospects and influencing them and taking them down the path of purchase. So yeah, expect a lot of no's. I'm used to no's these days, and if someone says yes, then great, let's move on. But yeah, work on the no's for sure.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Well, I'll jump on to the next question. So another question we had was, what are the advantages and disadvantages of working in sales? So Ashni, did you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure thing. So the advantages are, like, for me, and from what I see, I think it does like truly help you build these like amazing transferable skills that you can apply to almost any like industry, any profession. It's just about, again, how you sell yourself when you are going for sort of the next role. So I think that's one of the biggest things. You know, like, with all this hard work does come reward. So it is a highly incentivized kind of a profession. So compared to a lot of other ones where you're putting in all this effort, but you do get commission in return in sales. So that's another advantage of it. But I understand, because not everyone is driven by money, so that may not be like number one for people, but it's definitely up there for most salespeople. And again, I another advantage is just the exposure that it gives you to different kinds of people, different organizations, different roles, and you just learn so much about, what I was talking about before, like not just the company you're at, so not just the product, but also people internally, externally, the process, and just how it all works. On the flip side, so the disadvantage is, I mean, I don't think I'm a classic salesperson, because I don't view disadvantages as a disadvantage. I just view it as an opportunity. So each challenge is an opportunity. But if I was to think of a few, I think sometimes it can feel like you're in a very high pressure environment, and you need to meet XYZ targets. So I know that can get quite overwhelming for a few people. The second thing would also be, sorry if there's background noise. The second thing would also be around, I've lost my train of thought, but the second thing would be around just that rejection, that we were talking about before. So I think not everyone is equipped to deal with that, but there are ways to overcome it. So yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you, Colin, because there's
Yeah, no, all good. I think you've covered some of the most important aspects. In terms of the advantages, obviously, I view this as a continuous learning process. In sales, you can never say that you've mastered the art. Even to date, I learn from people around me by reading a lot of new concepts, and also by how the prospects react. You've got to evolve with them in terms of their buying patterns, right? So that's the continuous learning that I refer to. Second is about you broadening your professional network. So I think in sales, one of the key things is to be able to communicate and interact with so many different levels of people, which in return leads to more opportunities down the track, where it could be you getting a different job offer, you know, considering that you've proven yourself pretty worthy. Um, I think another aspect which obviously Ashley mentioned is the fact that it's limitless earning potential in sales, and there's always something new. There's always something fun. I mean, I look at the last couple of weeks as well. There's weeks where, I question myself in terms of, what next? Like, will we be able to meet our targets? Will we not? But in those moments is when you realize if you're in it and you're enjoying that thrill and that ride, then it's the best place to be. So I guess those are the different advantages, I would say. And you just keep building on your experience and your skills, and it's transferable to any other industry that you then choose to move to. But I rarely see people that come into sales leave sales. They will still be doing something along the lines of sales, unless they've said, you know what, this is not for me. Speaking of disadvantages, I'd have to say I just don't see any disadvantages. If you do see it as a disadvantage, then it's probably not the right industry for you. But the key things that Ashley mentioned was around the rejection. Certain people could be could feel a lot beat down with the rejection piece, and you've just got to figure out how to cope with it, and that's where the resiliency comes through. And the second is around the high pressure environment. And again, there is always going to be pressure. The key question you want to ask yourself is how much of that is self-inflicted versus the ones that aren't. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Okay, that was really great to hear. There's two things that I want to touch on from them. So the first one was network, second one was high pressure. Let's start with network. So I know that both of you mentioned, you get to meet different kinds of people, expand your network. How important would you say networking and, using your network is in sales? Ashni, did you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I think I think it's crucial. So I think it's just it should be in the DNA of a salesperson, because and not just that, but I think it also helps from a personal perspective. So the and networking, I think, isn't just an internal thing, like it's external as well. Like the more people you know from your client side, you could be talking to someone, and next time they'll remember that chat, and it will lead to your next lead or your next sale eventually. So that's from an external front, but internally is where I think it's important from a personal front. And I think when you work for, no matter the size of the organization, but it's really important to make sure that you kind of talk to people within the business as well, because today I'm supporting higher education, for example, but I might be interested in moving to another industry. And if I don't know who's leading that industry or who's working in that industry, it's really hard for me to make that move from a personal development perspective. And so that's how I kind of view networking in both those lenses. And it's important in all aspects. It's not always the most comfortable thing to put yourself out there though, but as I was saying before, it's just a chat. It's just, you just have a coffee with someone, you just go for a drink with them, and that's just how easy it is, or it should be, I think.
Yeah, I agree to your point with your point as well. I think networking is very important, having a strong network. I view it this way, that as a salesperson, you always have to be front of mind your prospects. no matter the journey that they're in, whether they're at a point in time when they're ready to buy or they've just dismissed you. The more you're front of mind, the more they'll remember you, and that could be through one of many channels. Obviously through phone, meeting at events, conferences, LinkedIn, social media presence. So all of these things are really, really important for a sales individual to be able to ensure that there is a consistency in the way that you're selling to people, so that when you pick up the phone down the track, you're not someone that they've never spoken to before. They've heard of you, they've seen you at some events, or through LinkedIn. So it's all sort of quite important, connecting the dots.
Awesome. Do you guys have any suggestions for like a grad or, someone just starting their early career in sales for like networking, how they can put themselves out there and meet new people, especially if maybe, people don't already know of them or they don't have people to introduce them to other people? Colin, did you want to answer that one first?
Yeah, look, certainly the things that I have done when I started out was not just go out and network for the sake of it, because you also don't want to have bragging rights of I know 1,000 people or I have 1,000 connections on LinkedIn, but that just doesn't matter. It's doing it for a specific reason that down the track you can benefit from each other, and you can obviously share those values as well. So the key thing is, when you're starting out, you start within your own family and your friend circle. That's the best network that you can look into. So whether it is about picking someone's brains about the kind of work that they're doing, learning about their profession, what are the key challenges that they're facing in those roles, that could give you a lot more information. That information can then be used when you're conversing with another person at any given stage in your career. And so I think you almost neglect your own inner circle, so to speak, most times, and you're always thinking about the external world. I think start internally, start having those conversations, and then it sort of naturally occurs to you. And even whilst you're out at, let's say, social gatherings, take a little bit of a keen interest in identifying the different people, what sort of jobs they're doing, what got them into those jobs, what are the benefits and advantages and disadvantages. And yeah, that's as basic as you can go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's so important to focus on your internal network. Most of your family, friends are probably not working in the same, profession, but they probably know people that might be in their company working in a sales role, for example, if that's what you were interested in, that you could leverage. I guess just to add a bit more to that point. So another thing is there's plenty of networking, how to network courses and, things like that available as well. So you just, if you're the kind of learner that, needs to attend one of those or go to one of those sessions, please do that, because it does, talk about a lot of these skills that we're mentioning. But something that I was told when I was a grad was many times, like say you've started at a place or you're interested, to Colin's point, like you're interested in a company or you're interested in a role, you can also just reach out to them on LinkedIn. And most people are pretty receptive, because you're not asking for information that's confidential. You're just asking to get a bit more insight on what they do or what the company might do. So I think it's as simple as kind of putting yourself out of your comfort zone and sending that message on LinkedIn, as well as more of a tactical way that you could just connect with like-minded people.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's so true. Like, you'd forget how like you have such a good inner circle of people who already have, all this experience or all these connections of their own. And like you said, Ashni, how, just reach out to people on LinkedIn. It's actually a lot easier than you think. A lot of people are happy to, chat about themselves or, help someone who's starting out in their early career too. Okay, so the other question, which was kind of relating to what we talked about before, was how you guys mentioned how there's, sometimes a lot of pressure, high pressure situations. So is there any sort of things that you guys like to do to deal with high pressure situations? Any, maybe, for example, like time management tips or things like that that you've implemented into your routine that helps you not get overwhelmed or, just manage that kind of stress? Colin, did you want to start with that one?
Yeah, certainly. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the pressure most times is self-inflicted. But when you're in a sales role, um, no 2 days are the same. And so you'd obviously have to expect that there are things that might come in your way, whether it's, having to deal with a disgruntled customer, maybe something's not gone right, you need to fix it. So being really in that mindset of I can solve problems when they occur, and rather than running away from them. So even if I'm dealing with a certain aspect of my daily routine, you're in a position to do that. But time management is, I guess, is one of the single biggest thing that sort of helps you overcome this moment. So I typically tend to follow the time management quadrant. I don't know if you're familiar with that, and not sure if a lot of the grads have looked into it, but I certainly would suggest that they have a look at it. It's essentially having 4 different quadrants, where the first quadrant is about urgent and important tasks. The second quadrant talks about the non-urgent, but it's important. The third one is about urgent but not important, and the fourth is not urgent and not important. So if you view all of your daily tasks and put them in these 4 quadrants and work on them on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, the answer is right there. You tend to figure out where you're spending most of your time. And if you're spending most of your time in the urgent and important quadrant, that means that you're not doing something right. But if you're spending most of your time in the second quadrant, which is a not urgent but important, that means you're ahead of the game. So I think work backwards from that. And I always, like to think that time is money. So use it really wisely, because in sales, it's all that matters. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed again. Just to add to that, in terms of, I guess, the high pressure environment, sometimes, to Colin's point, yeah, actually a lot of the times it is just, self-inflicted. And when you catch yourself being in those moments, it's about being aware that, oh, it's actually, the situation's not that bad. I'm making it worse in my head. So it's about stepping away, I guess, from a tactical perspective, just for 5-10 minutes, taking a breath, going for a walk, having a snack, whatever it is for you. Very similar to when, you were studying for your HSC and you felt like you couldn't do it. If you go back to the high school days, you'd be in a very similar situation when you feel like you're in that high pressure environment. And then, yeah, time management is crucial. And while I don't have a quadrant or anything like that I follow, I do try and, like, work back, the work back point that you were talking about. Or so say I've got something due, or there's a deadline, but it's 2 weeks from now, and then my manager comes in that's something urgent that's due in 2 days from now. It's just a matter of going, okay, if I do that deadline piece of work just for an hour today, an hour every day in the lead up to the 2 weeks, but I just prioritize getting the manager thing that's due in 2 days, today and tomorrow, then you're kind of managing the different tasks. So it goes back to exactly what Colin was saying, though, in terms of prioritizing the different tasks and the importance and urgency of them. But yeah, that's just a way. And obviously things like to-do lists and having put blocking time out in your calendar when you need to get things done are more just practical ways of addressing time management tools and tips. But yeah, that's just some ways to feel less pressure, I think.
Awesome. Thanks for the tips, guys. So for this question, I want to jump back to perhaps what you guys would do if you were, say, to start your whole career over again. Let's say you're, maybe high school, university, you're, just wanting to start your career in sales. What would you guys do if you could go back to that time? Is there anything you would do differently to what you did, or like, is there anything that you would suggest new grads or new people looking to get into sales should do? So basically, what should they do to get started in sales? And Ashni, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure thing. I was having a bit of a think of this one. I think I wouldn't do anything differently personally. I think the only thing is that I was very focused on getting into a graduate program. So pretty much every company I applied to offered a graduate program, because that was my motivation. Just wanted to work for a large company that provided a graduate program. But upon having been in the industry for the last 6 to 7 years, I think I wouldn't close off some of the smaller companies that instead of grad program provide an entry level role in a similar space, because often and I've got friends that did do that, and their learning trajectory is a lot quicker when they work in a smaller company that may not be providing a grad program. So I think what I'm trying to say is being open to companies of all sizes, and working for a startup is a cool new thing now. So actually considering that as well would be one of the things that I would have done differently, or the advice that I would like to share. I'll just hand it back to Colin, because I probably need to think about this one a bit more beyond that one thing that I've shared. So yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm on the same boat as you are, Ashni. I wouldn't change anything because I think, I found my purpose. I've been lucky and fortunate enough to be in the position and in the industry that I work in, for the company that I work in, with the people. But when I interview a lot of people that come in, and I also understand, given the numbers and the number of roles that are available in the market, the number of companies that are out there in the market, it becomes quite hard for a grad, because it's quite overwhelming to think of what's next. So if I were to, advise someone as they're walking in and preparing themselves to start a career in sales, first thing is try and identify what sort of industry would you love to work in. Have a little bit of a knowledge around that. Have a think around that. Second is the type of company. As Ashni mentioned, don't disregard the small companies, because you can look at all of the different companies, and the most important thing is, does it fit your criteria? And the one single question you want to ask yourself is, what is this business going to do for me in return? If I'm going to step into that business, what can that do for me in return? Match your strengths and personality with the right, area of sales, because there's different sort of types of sales roles. So you want to ensure that you match it with the right one. Think of what skills are transferable into specific roles. Try to personalize when you're looking at organizations. I come across a lot of profiles where it seems or appears that they've used the exact same approach to 10 other organizations. And they're going through it with such a sort of hurry. Take a step back, personalize it, try and understand a little bit more about the business, and try and look at it from a different lens. What if I were in this company? Would I enjoy it? And I always say that you want to be working for a company that really invests in your training and development. That's a massive criteria, because as a salesperson, you might think that you can pick up these skills, and once you've hit a certain level and you see the numbers come through, you're a veteran in sales. I totally don't believe that. Sales is always something that is an ongoing sort of sales, skill, training, and development. So always look for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Ashni, was there anything else you wanted to add? I know you were having a little think.
No, I think it's all good. Colin's done a great job, so I don't want to, I'm good.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, thanks. That was super insightful from both of you. I think the next question would be, what does career progression look like? So they've gotten into sales, they've started, what kind of career progression can they expect? Colin, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, look, I can speak for myself in the company that I work for. there's two ways for you to look at career progression. One is, because I tend to ask these questions quite a lot in the interviews, and people typically tend to look at it from a hierarchical perspective, which is more your vertical growth. Vertical growth could be you come in as an entry-level salesperson. You could be doing anything from appointment setting to doing prospecting, then handing over to the sales rep or an account manager or an executive, and then being able to manage the end-to-end sales process. Then you grow up to becoming, let's say, a selling team leader or a divisional sales director or a sales director, and then a VP of sales. So that's the sort of hierarchy that you're looking at. And then there is the horizontal growth, which often gets neglected. I feel the horizontal growth is around, let's say, you're an individual contributor. You don't necessarily love to manage people. You work best when you work by yourself. But what you want to be able to do is capitalize on a particular campaign or a product set or a business arm within the wider business. So, for example, in a bigger company like, I don't know if it's IBM, for example, if there is a division which focuses on, let's say, automation, then you may want to have your expertise within that and a leader in that space rather than going up the ranks. So that's how I look at it. There's a horizontal growth and there is a vertical growth. Try and figure out along the way what's important to you.
Yeah, very similar. So at Adobe, we actually have this term. So there's obviously climbing the corporate ladder, which is the vertical progression, and then there's the corporate jungle or the corporate gym, which is basically trying out a bunch of different roles and moving kind of horizontally as well. And I think I think it's up to the individual, like what you want to do. Some people are very passionate about just growing and becoming the best they can be in what they're doing, and therefore they move into some of those senior roles and management roles in the same business unit. And then other people want to try a few other things. And I think ultimately doesn't matter how you get there, as long as, and whatever your there is. Like for me, for example, if I want to be an executive, I have to realistically look like, is it better for me to get experience across a bunch of these other areas like marketing, product management, to Colin's point, or should I just continue in this and become a VP in this space? So I think it's up to you, but you just have to make sure that you communicate that at sort of each level, so you do get considered when the right opportunity comes along, and you're not forgotten as part of that process.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
a good point,
Thanks.
which is obviously communicating it to your managers as to exactly what you want to be doing down the track. That makes it easier, and you can work towards that as well.
Awesome. And we did have a question in the comments, which was, is this specifically for sales only or anything technical also? I think that was when you were speaking, Colin, but just to answer, I guess, Colin, you can go ahead with that one if you'd like.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's specific to sales, but I'd like to believe that I've seen most of that happen in sales, where people come in and say, well, I'd love to be able to manage a team, but what does actually managing or leading a team mean to you? You're only looking at it from a different, maybe from a third party point of view, that, let's say, for example, Colin is a sales director at IQPC. I want to be that person, but do you actually know what it means to be in that position? Do you actually love doing what you're doing in that position? Because there's different things, as I mentioned, to different people. And I'd like to believe from experience, having spoken to a lot of other people in different sectors, it could also work in the technical world as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of things that we've spoken about that can also work in the technical world, like your 30, 60, 90-day thing, just
100%.
As well as like the networking things that you guys mentioned, in a circle. There's a lot of things that can be applied to a bunch of different industries. I think that's why sales is also something that there's, a lot of skills that people can take to other industries in the future if they want to explore a different career path. So the other thing was, For any of the grads interested in applying for both of your organizations, is there anything that you can recommend to help them stand out when applying? So, Ashni, did you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure thing. So the way Adobe hires, or I went through this process, it is like a 4 or 5 interview, like 5-step interview process, which is pretty common nowadays. So please don't be overwhelmed by that. And I think that some of the key skills that we mentioned before, having that positive attitude if you are going for a sales role, but even if you're not, just in general, like having positive attitude, doing your research on the company, the values that we have of being genuine, being having integrity, and having a growth mindset. So making sure that you do your research in that space. The other thing that I did, and I always recommend, is talking to someone that's obviously working at the place right now. So literally, like, if you're interested in working for Adobe, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I can obviously help you and help you navigate the process. But I think the biggest thing is just being genuine in like whatever it is that you want, because and the biggest thing that I've realized again later on, and not as a grad, but it's that you're being interviewed by Adobe, but you should also be interviewing them. So also ask questions of whatever it is that you want out of them, and don't just ask questions at the end of your interview for the sake of it or because it looks good. I think that's like a key thing that I've come to realize later on, as I've said. Not when I was a grad, I didn't know that. So yeah, that's kind of the process and some of the key things to look out for. But always here and happy to help anyone that's interested.
Cool. Thanks, Ashni. I guess from IQPC's perspective, one of the key things that I always talk about is the people that are most successful in the sales team are the ones where we fit what they are looking for, and it doesn't work the other way around. I could sit here or at an interview and try and sell the dream role, but come 3 weeks, 3 months, they will probably think this is not for them because it hasn't met their expectation. So I would go back to what I'd referred on previously, which is doing a little bit more research into identifying the type of industry you want to work within, but most importantly, let alone the industry, what is the type of role and what do you want that role to do for you? So work backwards from that. Look at what are your key skills and strengths. How can that be transferred into this type of role? Our sort of sales, I guess one of the key things that we emphasize the most is that any person that comes into the business is going to be actually molded into the best salesperson that they possibly can be. So there's a lot of emphasis on the training and development and sales techniques, because we do have quite a intense methodology that we tend to, and process that we tend to follow. Key things to know is it's a very good sales environment, good culture. And so when you're coming in, be prepared to ask questions about what the business can do for you, and what good looks like down the line, because we're looking for obviously people that are coming in with like-minded approach around career goals, objectives, and it's a two-way street. It's not just one way. We need to meet halfway to ensure that we're doing justice to the person as well as the other way around to the business.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. You've given such great insights. So that's going to come close to the end of our webinar today. I don't think there's any more questions in the chats. So was there anything else, like any final insights, anything else you guys wanted to let the viewers know before we wrap up? Ashni, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure thing. I think just in general, we've touched on a lot of these things. Like every role, sales, has its ups and downs for people, but just remember the key skills of, being resilient, having a positive sort of mindset, and making sure that, to what Colin has been sort of saying, that it is what you want, like in terms of industry, in terms of role, because at the end of the day, like, you do spend 80% of the rest of your life at work or something like that as the stat. So just make sure it fits what you're after. And yeah, that's it.
Well, my only advice is whether you're an experienced individual or you're just out of grad, your uni, it's a big decision. Treat it like it is a massive decision in your life, because you don't want to be stepping into a role which is only going to last for a short period of time. Because you want to be really bought into a company. I think when you look at the tenure, it needs to actually speak for itself, because you want to give that much of time to really absorb all of the key things about the organization, also be able to demonstrate your performance and your worthiness within the business. And that doesn't happen in 3 months or 6 months, it happens over time. So remaining consistent, having the right mindset going into an interview, and personalizing each interview is super, super important. And given that it's a big decision, if and should anybody watching this webinar feel the need to have a chat separately, you can always reach out to me as well. And I'm happy to have that conversation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for all the insights you guys gave. It was a super interesting conversation. And it was something that, even myself, not even from a background, found like very applicable to my own industry that I'm in. So just to wrap this up, if anyone is, interested in finding more sales opportunities, make sure you go and sign up on Grad Australia. You can check out Adobe and IQPC. You can look at the profile, see if there's any opportunities available for you to apply to as well. And we also have a bunch of upcoming sessions, like all the way up till, for the whole month of July. So make sure you're staying on our socials, on our LinkedIn, Facebook, whatnot, and keeping an eye on what we've got going on. There might be things that maybe not for you, but maybe your friend might want to tune in on. So just make sure you share it with other people in your network. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or any of our speakers today, or email us if you have any questions or concerns. And if you guys want to watch this video again, it will be on our LinkedIn, it'll be on our Facebook and YouTube, so you can always rewatch it. And it'll also be on the Grad Australia careers profile for both Adobe and IQPC. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and hope everyone has a great Thursday.
Thank you very much, everyone, and Ashni for contributing to this panel, as well as Emily. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks all.